Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Young Advice Forum from Blok Club in Zurich. I'm Dr. James Isaacs, and we have a very interesting group of people here to talk about music and the future of music and how we relate to it as students and professionals. So, before we go any further, let's just go around the room and please, about 3 sentences. Just give us your name and what you do, and we'll go from there, okay?
Okay. My name is Anne-Kathrin Isaacs. I'm his wife. I'm a pianist or co-repetitor for choirs and soloists here in Zurich, Zurich Singakademie or Winterthur Musikkollegium, things like that.
Hi, my name is Angela Harrison. I come from Botswana. I've been in Zurich for the past 7 years. I'm a singer. I was in the studio. Now I'm a freelance singer, and I live here.
My name is Ana Silvestro. I'm a concert pianist. I lived in Zurich for the past 4 years. I studied with Konstantin Scherbakov at the Zurich Hochschule der Künste. And I'm looking forward for this evening.
Greetings, I'm Alexander Boldachev. I'm studying in Zurich High School for Music, harp, and last 7 years I'm living in Zurich and doing everything around the harp and around the music. And it's a big pleasure to be here.
My name is Bastian Power. Mr. Isaacs is my English and music teacher at school. I play the piano, clarinet, and saxophone.
It's Dr. Isaacs.
Yeah, I'm Martin Schönberger. I'm at Dr. Isaacs' music student. Play since 10, 12 years the pan flute.
My name is Andreas Scholl. I'm a singer. I sing countertenor, studied in Basel, lived in Switzerland and Basel for 20 years, and I will sing tonight with my wife, Tamar, who sits next to me.
I am Tamar. I come from Israel. I play piano and harpsichord.
Sorry, Dr. Tamar Halperin.
Doctor.
Forgot that, no?
Well, I used to be just Tamar Halperin and became Frau Dr. Tamar Scholl Halperin. It's getting really complicated as I get older. So I play piano and harpsichord, and I try to play all the repertoire that I can on these instruments. Tonight I accompany Andreas here in Zurich.
My name is Etienne Abelin, and I'm a violinist and conductor, and I'm a co-organizer of this Y Night, and we're very happy to have the doctor and her husband here tonight, and also very happy to have the other doctor here hosting this little round.
Good. I want to start with a question for Tamar. We have some students here and sort of young professionals and some older professionals. I wondered if you could talk about the role of your education with what you're doing now, because what you're doing now is quite eclectic, perhaps is a way to describe it. And there's no, well, I'll just let you deal with that question however you want, because if your experience is like mine, in school you learn a certain focused set of skills, and you get into the real world and you find that in some ways it matches what you learned, in some ways you have to adapt. And also that your inspiration may be bigger than your education. So perhaps you could address those issues.
I feel now that, well, I feel very grateful. I got very good education. I think probably the best education that you can get in a school. But like you said in your question, probably what you need to have for the real world as a musician is something you don't really learn in a school. You learn it by doing, actually performing and playing with people. I think probably the biggest asset that education or school has for me is that this was the place where I met most of my colleagues. In Basel, I studied early music, and that's where I met Andreas and where I met Etienne. Before that, I was at Juilliard, and I studied classical piano, and I learned many interesting things about the piano, of course, but the real real education that I still use every day is what I learned from colleagues, either just by meeting them and ending up playing with them, or listening to them, seeing how they go about getting a career, for example, how they approach music, how they work, how they practice. I think if you have a good teacher, it's a great thing. So you listen to your teacher and you get all the advice, but it's just one person, and even a great teacher will only give you one perspective. And I think what's important is to try and expand that as much as you can and get as many perspectives, as much feedback as you can. And this you get from other teachers, maybe of other instruments too, not necessarily your main instrument. And certainly from your colleagues, the people you work with, the people you listen to. I think it's good to attend class concerts or school concerts, you know, just to see what other people are doing. This is where I at least get a lot of ideas about technique, about repertoire, about how to program things, you know. So I don't underestimate what you can learn in a library setup or in a practice room. There's plenty of work to be done there. But ultimately, to be a great performer, if this is what you want to be, this you have to do for real on the stage with other people. And school can only get you this far.
I had a question for Andreas Scholl. You're known as one of the leading countertenors in the world, and this is already a somewhat unusual career path. And then the music that you do a lot of early music, what we would consider early music, Baroque and Renaissance music. And then you also do music from the sort of mainstream of the classic repertoire, from the Romantic and the classic periods. Then you write your own music and you do pop songs. This is quite an interesting mix. I wonder if you could talk about how you broaden the size of the box for you to include such an interesting mix of things, and if there's anything interesting to say about that.
I think this needs to be always a kind of a natural, it comes out of curiosity. So as a boy, I joined the boys' choir at the age of 7, and I sang every day. Singing lessons every day, every Monday an individual singing lesson with a vocal coach, every Sunday mass in church, new motets, Gregorian chant. It was a daily thing for me, so I never thought about singing as an art or something special. It was my life. And then as a teenager, I was fascinated by electronic music, by synthesizers. I don't know, electronic sounds, the fact that you can turn a button and you change an oscillator and then you create sounds electronically. And I had my heroes like, I don't know, Howard Jones, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, Kraftwerk, all these groups. And so I bought my first synthesizer when I was 17. And for me, it was never a question like, will it be only this or the other? When I arrived in Basel as a student, I thought, maybe because of the small apartment I have this kind of electronic music hobby will have to stop. But then I soon discovered that there was a studio for electronic music at the Music Academy where I was studying. So next to my early music studies, I did electronic music and worked in a recording studio. And I think later then, of course, professionally, I was working almost exclusively core Baroque repertoire and Renaissance repertoire. And then you do this for about 20 years. And of course, then there will be curiosity, not out of being bored, but you say, what else can there be? What is a challenge? And I think that's an important thing for musicians, the desire to grow, to constantly find a new challenge and find a teacher. Like for singers, it's opera. You learn first, you learn to sing, and then you realize that the acting aspect is important. So although you are already an advanced singer, you start as a beginner working with real professional directors. And to me, that's never a threat, but it's just the most exciting thing to go and say at the age of, I don't know, my mid-30s, I did my first Giulio Cesar, and I walked to the theater and I said, great, today I can learn how to be an opera actor. And this curiosity never stopped. And sometimes I hear something in the radio, I go to a concert, and I say, that's something I will look into. And I don't follow up on all these curiosity elements, but some of them I stick with and I develop something out of it.
Excellent. I have a question for you, Etienne. Here we have, I have to say, world-class performers, but we're not in the place you would expect to find them. This is a little bit like seeing a Siberian tiger in Brazil. It'd be a little shocking, but maybe it's not.
No.
So, classical music is facing a lot of challenges these days. And with economies in stress anyway, and the modern digital revolution and the evolution of iPhones, there's a lot of competition. And here we are in a club, and I have to say a little funky club. How did you get the vision to do this, to bring this kind of music out of the concert hall and into a place where the common person would be more apt to encounter it?
I think this music that we're talking about can fit anywhere. Anywhere. In this place, in a concert hall, in a train station, in an apartment. These are, for me, these pieces are like sculptures in space, and we can take them and we can put them wherever we want, and we can do with them whatever we want. A little bit more, a little bit less. And so we can take Siberian tanks like Andreas's voice. I like what a comparison. And put them in a club here, which Brazil is actually quite a good image because it's very hot here today.
It is a bit warm, but I was thinking you more of the tiger. So.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I do think this is something very important. The classical music has had this history, or has had this story of being sort of associated with certain settings and certain rituals in settings, with a certain dress code also, not to forget. And ultimately, in terms of substance, this is quite arbitrary. It has its logic behind it. There's business models behind it that work, that function, and everything. But ultimately, the music works as well in jeans and a T-shirt in a place like this. And for me to rediscover the music in these settings has been incredibly refreshing in this series.
What about this? I mean, what kind of reaction are you getting? Are people coming? I was at the last one, it was packed. So it seems like you have struck a chord, pardon the pun. Could you talk about are you finding this to be successful? Are you finding resistance? Are you finding acceptance? How's it going?
No, a lot of acceptance and a lot of curiosity and a lot of happy faces. A lot of, it can be like this also. And from many people, and not only from younger people, but really throughout what your experience has been, because you've done settings like that in the past. How did you what did you see there, or what did you find also in terms of audience?
The audience was usually, of course, a younger audience. What is exciting from the performer's perspective is that, as you just said, we created rituals about how to present music. With us playing early music, Baroque music, the ritual of the concert hall is unauthentic anyway. The concert is a later invention. So how did people perform Dowland songs? And if we look into this, we see that this was salon music. It was the educated citizens of London. The daughter came home and said, "Oh my God, I just found the latest album of Dowland songs." And she brought it like somebody buys a CD or a film. And then they put it on the table, they opened it. The prints were made in 4 ways. They sat around the table and they side-read a little bit the Dowland songs, like maybe Beatles song album or something. And that was exciting for them. So this was music for amateurs, for the ambitious amateur, and people enjoyed. The people who usually enjoyed it were the people who also were able to play it. And that's a little bit something we don't have these days, that people who consume music are rarely people who do music themselves. But the exciting thing for us is you stand here and there's not a gap, a stage, and the audience is like neatly arranged in rows, but they stand right in front of you with a beer glass in the hand. But nevertheless, they're as attentive as the standard classic audience.
I think that performance in its essence is really about communication. And being Israeli and being the age group that I am, I feel more comfortable in this kind of setup. This is somehow more closer to how I normally behave and talk and communicate with people than the classical concert hall, even though by now I'm quite used to that too, and I was trained to be comfortable there. But I never wear suits, and I never wear, this kind of, I don't use the dress code that the classical concert hall requires, and the rituals that go with it to me are always a bit foreign. Bowing is a very odd thing to do. Without meaning any disrespect to the people, I think it's wonderful that they come, and of course I want to express my gratitude. But where else in the world will I bow? It's a strange thing to do. And I think it's somehow easier to just show up and see people who are more or less my age and dress more or less like me, and probably are interested very much in similar music genres as I am, and then just play for them or play with them. I think it breaks a kind of barrier, and I'm quite comfortable with that.
Just trying to think of one other question. What about the future of classical music? We have a lot of competition. Also, kind of the place in the social class that classical music has held is breaking down. A big problem with symphony orchestras in the US is the benefactors of these great institutions are retiring and passing from the scene, and their children are not as interested as they were. They just an excellent article on what's going on in Minnesota made the point that the new generation just doesn't love the music the same way that their parents and their grandparents did. And so they're not opening the bank accounts to support it to the same degree. Also, with digital media, you can stay at home and watch a webcast of a great orchestra, never leave your house, all of these things. And yet at the same time, because the modern world is really eclectic, there's room for people to be exposed to classical music in a way where they may have been sort of put off by it. So that, in a sense, the breakdown of how classical music fits within a socioeconomic class, breaking down is both, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. My feeling is that everyone loves classical music, they just don't know it yet. And that it's our job to introduce them to it in a way that they'll fall in love with it. Any thoughts on those questions?
I very much agree with that. It's also the experience, also working with people from other genres, with VJs, with DJs. There's often, sure, classical music. Yeah, I also listen to it. There's these tracks. They're on my iPod anyway. The live situation is different. I think in a way, we need to catch up to what's going on digitally anyway, in terms of acceptance and in terms of accessibility, and really create interfaces. I'm very, very hopeful, and because what I see is that the really good music doesn't have a problem. You can't destroy it. You don't agree?
No. I agree, but there's I think classical music is not for everybody. There's like some trash metal fan can try to convince me that I don't know, there's trash metal bands that is wonderful and explain all the details to me, and I might still not like it. But that's exactly what you said before. Is exactly what I feel, is that statistically there must be many, many more people who would appreciate classical music. They just don't know it, and we need to facilitate them getting in touch with that music. And it's an old story that if I would have never been in a classic music concert, so when can I applaud? What do I need to wear? And there's a threshold. If you think that all the other listeners are experts and you are the one who doesn't know anything, it's this social pressure thing. And I worked with an Australian Baroque orchestra, and for example, there's a wonderful thing. They have this website, and one of the buttons says, "So you've never been to a classical concert?" And you click on, and with a few very friendly, not patronizing, just very says, well, in general, the orchestra plays something called a symphony, and there's individual movements, and we think it's better to go from one movement without an applause. What should you wear? Well, you don't need to dress up in a tuxedo, but since we celebrate something here, something nice, maybe put on something smart, but not, and you kind of, it's a very nice way to attract an audience. And I played with that orchestra many times, and they are very limited in how far they can travel. They have these 5 cities in Australia that are big cities or major cities that they can visit, but they have, I think, 35 or 40 concerts in the same hall in Sydney, and they're all sold out. It's wild. I mean, we sold out 8 concerts or 6 concerts of Stabat Mater, a contemporary Stabat Mater composition, and of course that's all the people who have creative on their business cards, you know, with these creative managers, creative directors in the record companies and concert halls. They should be creative and try to access people and approach them and say, hey, this matters. And the route for this, I think, is a school education. It's much more difficult if you have never listened to classical music, and at the age of 30, suddenly you're expected to discover it. It's more difficult than if, as a child, you played the piano, even just for a couple of years, or the flute or something, and then you already, in your memory, there's some connection to this field of music.
However, not to forget, you can go through school and then there's a gap. You're 14, 15, and then there's no real vessel. And I think we also need to fill that gap. And
I wanted to say, since 2 years, I am doing maybe 3 years, I'm doing lots of concerts for children. I think until now, me and the quartet, we had like 30 concerts for children in Switzerland alone. And I saw something quite interesting, you know. It's very important that very young children are exposed to classical music, because afterwards, so first you're exposed to classical music as a very young child. Then comes these teenage years with trash, metal, garbage, and iron, and every metal possible. And then around the age of 20, you know, somehow the people reconnect to what they heard while they were little children. And that's the music that somehow stays with them for the rest of their lives. So I think that period is extremely important. What do we feed to children in the very formative years, not only in their teenage years and like that? This was my experience. Many people who come and they say, oh, you know, I listened when in their 20s or 30s and said, oh, you know, I studied the piano or something, and I heard this kind of music, and then I didn't like it. It wasn't cool to like Tchaikovsky who likes Swan Lake when you are a boy and you are 14, 15? Nobody. That's a total no-go. And then, later in life, they rediscover that. That remains somewhere stuck deep within themselves.
Let's just open it up to anyone who has any additional questions.
You will play also songs written by yourself tonight, right? And I'm really looking forward to those songs, because I appreciate so much that you dare to put it next to Brahms and Downet and these things. No, I really appreciate that. And can you say anything about that, how it comes to your own songs and putting it into this repertoire in the program?
I don't know if I can comment about comparing the quality of our pop songs and the Brahms songs or Purcell. I mean, I would never pretend to be on that level, but it's also not what I'm trying to do. I think what it is really for me is just something quite simple. It's simple music, it's pop, so easy. And what I like about it is that there's a spontaneity and casualness in playing. I don't worry about performing it, perfect. It's my music, so it's probably as authentic as, performance can get, because I'm playing my own ideas. And what the big benefit for me, other than the fun of playing my song, is that I then try to recreate this kind of spontaneity and this kind of authenticity, apply the same sentiments, the same feelings when I actually perform Brahms, and try to play Brahms as if it's my song and as if it's a pop song, you know, to make it simple, to make it communicative, to make it just play its own without the big effort behind it. In general, it's aesthetic ideal that I'm looking for in any music. What do you think? Is it a pretentious choice to put your pop song next to Brahms?
No, it's just fun to play your own songs for an audience. And I remember my teacher saying, in classical music you're the messenger, and in pop music you are the message. So he has, first of all, he was a Hollywood child, so he was Richard Levitt, my teacher, was raised in Los Angeles, and he started singing and performing in films and television shows at the age of 4 years old, with his brother tap dancing and him singing. So he has a strong relationship to the show side of singing. And he said that, of course, as a classical musician, there are lots of cliches, and there are few reasons to be yourself on stage. There's established interpretations for everything. Even in the early music now, it's terrible to see that plenty of the singers, I just taught Bach arias, and there was Christmas Oratorio and B minor Mass and the Passions, and then you hear that most of the students do what you expect them to do. Yeah, it's an interpretation that somebody in the 80s recorded with an early music orchestra, and then you do what the others do and you're safe. And there's an audience for it too. People who sit, we get some kind of satisfaction of saying, oh wow, this is the 150th Dichterliebe that I heard, and it's exactly as I thought it should be. No bad surprises. Isn't that, whew, nobody shocks me here. And as a pop singer, that's not possible, because you talk about yourself. You are the message. There is no ritual for Sting to sing a song like all other Stings sing it, because he's the only one with that name. So he cannot step up and put his hand on the piano to be safe, and there's no I don't know, emotional gestures and outbursts and the cliches that we laugh about sometimes when we see classical music. It exists for every instrument, for singers, for everybody. And as pop singers, you don't have it. And it's fantastic if you work with students and you ask them to sing a folk song from their home country in their mother language. That is usually the first time when you hear the personality behind the singer, because the music itself is too simple to create a smoke screen. You have to be yourself, and if they dare to do that, it's a wonderful experience. Of course, we know it. It's a wonderful experience to be yourself on stage and to sing the way you think the composer meant it. And in a pop song, then of course, if you are the quotation composer, again, I have to say it's very simple stuff that I do. It's still fun to be yourself and not to fulfill a cliche that the audience expects. And I think that's also something the new listeners that we should attract to classical music, that's what we should offer them. The cliche they know. There's all the parodies of opera singers. And the big finale of an aria when with a huge noise and then everybody shouts, bravo! I say, stupid Handel, why did he always have these postludiums after the aria? Couldn't he just end Ombra mai fu and so ave più? Amo! No, he has to have 5 bars postludium. We always miss out on the amo!
I had a question for you. I'm sorry, tell me your name again.
Angela.
Okay, so you're from Botswana.
Yes.
Not known as a hotbed of Western art music.
No, not at all.
So you got some explaining to do.
I studied in South Africa in Cape Town. I went to the music college there, and I was in the opera studio there and worked there for a long time. Then I came here and got into the studio in Zurich. And I think I've learned a lot of lessons being in Europe.
But what I mean is, what sparked you? How did you get going? And then how does your, let's say, how you experience music in the first 10 years of your life in Botswana, how does that relate to what you're doing now? Or does it, or what can you say about that? Botswana has a really beautiful, colorful musical heritage and culture. But it's not exactly the same as singing opera. So what do you have to say about that transition and that journey you've been on?
Well, my dad's from England and my mom's from Botswana, so I came from a very eclectic family. So my dad had all the classical LPs, and my mom had the Miriam Makeba. She had the pop. I can't even remember, like all the soul music from the 60s and 70s. So I just listened to everything when I was young. And then I went to boarding school, and it was an international school, and that's where I got interested in musicals. They did a lot of musicals, and then my teacher said, "Oh, why don't you start taking singing lessons?" So I did when I was 13. So I've always had like lots of music in my life, just from different areas and different people. But my teacher was the one who said at 16, 17, "What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be a lawyer." And then she says, no, why don't you go study opera? And the first time I saw an opera, and I was like, "Daddy, can I?" And he's like, Had to think about it for a while. Anyway, he let me go and study opera in Cape Town, which is 2,000 kilometers away from Botswana. There I saw my first opera when I was 18, Lucia di Lammermoor, and I can still remember it, and I was blown away. So it took a very long time for me to become interested, like deeply interested or passionate about opera. And then I had to spend another 3 or 4 years trying to become a singer. And I think there were only 2 of us who graduated from my year. So it was hard going. Yeah.
And I had a question for you. I'm sorry, your name again is?
Alexander.
Alexander, where in Russia are you from?
St. Petersburg.
Now talk about that, coming from St. Petersburg to Zurich. What sort of musical world did you grow up in? What prompted you to come here?
So my mother, she's a professor in St. Petersburg Conservatory, and even before I have born, I was already on the stage. Just when she was pregnant, with 8 months, she was like sitting with the piano with me here and playing concerts, like 2-3 hours. And after I got my education from 3 years with the piano, and then from 5 years with the harp. And that was actually good from my parents to make this decision, because after all, I had no technical problems with the piano or harp. And that helped me to come to Europe. First, for the festivals, master classes, competitions, and then to study here. I'm already 7 years in Zurich, and that gives me a lot of, different possibilities here in Europe. Because in Russia, music is more, with more cliches. Here you can be a little bit more open-minded. So in Russia, I was only playing this classical concerts, so on big stage, and the auditorium is here, and you don't see the people. You just come in good clothes and you play, and that's also one art of classical music. But here we can also make another things.
You were saying before something that you're interested with the harp in going into electronic music loops. What do you envision? What's your vision?
Yes, so I would like now to make something. It's not about electronic music. It's about the classical harp, but with more possibilities of the instrument. Now we have just 2 years. We have a new electronic harp. It's not electronic. It's acoustic electronic. So it's normal harp with just microphones all over the board, and you can play it as normal harp or with any effects you want. And what I told you about looping, it just to make the technique on the harp is different, and you can make more and more. You can even play like a full orchestra just on the harp. Harp is not so popular instrument now, and a niveau, so the level of the harpists, really different. We have few classical harpists, which is really good, and the rest of them, they are really not trying to make anything professional, because it's now a big problem for all the classical music. People have no any idea of which level could it be. If anybody can show few tricks on the harp, we can record it right here. We put it on YouTube, and you will have million views because people, oh yes, it's harp, that's cool. Yes, why not? Yes, you know, and everybody learn harpist, you know, and why I need to spend like 18 years already to learn this instrument? That's now the problem, actually. And I don't know what is better. Is it good or not? Because people can enjoy now the all classical music. You can play on the piano to Elise from Beethoven, and everyone says, yes, it's cool, it's classical music, yeah, that's cool, I like it. And just 30 years before, you were playing, I don't know, Schnittke on the stage, and people think, okay, that was not so conceptual, you know. And so, I don't know, is it good or not?
Times are changing. I think we have a new set of challenges and a new. It's a whole new landscape. And I tend not to think so much in is it good or is it not good. I like more to think of, well, how is it different and what kind of opportunities are there to deal with. Because my impression is that people are changing, and there's not only classical music out there. It's not like, I mean, we talk a little bit here as if everybody hears the gospel of classical music, our world will be saved. There's a lot of very interesting and great things out there, and people have their own ways of being creative and doing things. And it's my issue is more of having classical music be, in classical music I mean composed music from the past, but also composed music from today, be in a dialogue with our world and with what other people are doing in other arts forms, but also in other in science, maybe in law, in any field, and just have it be part of that, and that I think is really interesting. And then you think in terms of opportunities and not in terms of things changed in the last 10 years. But I don't know.
I think in the early music we had this. In musicology, we learned that there was the prima and the seconda pratica, the idea that up to a certain point, the composition itself was art. Whether people liked it, whether people were moved by it, didn't matter. The composer expresses his creativity with a composition. And then at the Renaissance time, there were these people, the Camerata Fiorentina, a group of musicians, poets, philosophers, and they said, so is this right? What should we create? Why do we make music? And they say, no, music needs to communicate. Music needs to be relevant to human beings, and ultimately what we try to do is change them, transform them with the music. It's about the soul. That's what they said. And I think that's a question that comes back these days again with contemporary music. At times, to me, seems like prima pratica. It's the composer who says it's art, and who would argue with that? He says that's my way of expressing myself. We say wonderful. The piece gets commissioned, gets performed once, and never again. And then probably something's not right here, because I think whatever we do, we should think about the people that we do it for, and that needs this effort. And the problem is that it needs also an education. It needs an effort from the consumer as it needs an effort from us. And I think the social changes that we observe is that everything should be effortless. Yeah. You want to be a harpist? Great, play a few chords and call yourself harpist. Wonderful. And you have enough people who admire that. And it's why read a book when I can go to the movies and just sit there and I see the film about the book, but I don't read the book anymore, because reading a book is an effort. So there's these, I think that's a strong factor that influences the problem also of classical music, because classical music, like any sports, needs an effort to do it. And even if you watch a football game, you need to understand the rules, what's offside, and there needs to be some background to appreciate it. And that background is, again, now circle closes again, comes back to the schools, to education, that you know the basic rules and you have, hopefully, like that's what I had in Basel, wonderful teachers who ignite you. I had singing lessons with René Jacobs where at the end I thought I was physically exhausted because he challenged me, but I left and I was mentally like I was like on drugs. I thought, oh, it's fantastic, amazing, and this is the Lucifer, you know, the teacher who ignites something and then makes the fire grow, and it needs to be something that grows inside of you. It's not the teacher who says do as I tell you. That's not the passion we need, but it needs to be somebody who from your playing, from your singing says, oh, here I heard something, and then you say, let's go back there, and you start digging and trying to unearth something. But that's takes time and takes effort, and the same is for the listener. The listener also needs to be willing to spend a few hours reading maybe a biography of a composer. It's not always necessary to appreciate the composition, but it can deepen. It's like the bonus features on a DVD. Yeah, the added value. I think that's what they call it, added value. You just don't get the film, but you get people telling you about the film. And that's what we try to do here today. We don't only present the music, but we say, hey, this is the music, but this is how I found this piece, this is what I think about it. And the audience today, I think they want that.
I have a question for Bastian. You're working on like a fantasia on a theme from a video game. I didn't even know that video games had music. I've never played video games. I just not into them. But this is actually, video games has become a huge venue for composers in the United States, where in fact it's almost becoming bigger than writing for movies. And some great music is being written. I don't know if you could say anything, what led you into that, and because you've grown up with classical music, with some jazz music, pop music, video games, it all seems to be mixing together in a great big hamper and coming out in interesting ways. Anything you want to say about that?
Well, sorry.
Don't worry, it's only being broadcast to the whole world. It's fine. It's fine.
So, do you mean like how I got to this idea?
How'd you get the idea? Obviously it sparked you, and
well, I don't know. I first started to play classical music because classic is the root of all kind of music. And yeah, well, then I started to play jazz, and later with 13, I came interested in rock and metal music, which wasn't actually really a really good idea because my parents weren't really for it, and I did it against their opinion and experiences with that. And now I thought, like, yeah, why don't you cover the main themes from the video games, or because the music is great and it developed a lot when you played like the video games called Zelda or Skyrim or something like this. This music has developed a lot, and it's really great music, and I really like it. And I also like to listen to other covers, and I like to compose these covers by myself, but to create my own ideas, and I like to play it to my friends and to show it and to ask, yeah, how do you like it, and do I have to improve something, or does it create like imagination or fantasy in your mind? And yeah.
This issue of covering music is nothing new. Igor Stravinsky got a whole part of his career covering music by other composers and recomposing it, and this has always been part of music, so keep going with that.
Yeah.
I thought that earlier in this discussion, a very important aspect was brought to attention by Dr. Scholl. Okay. And about the cliches in classical music and the sensibility of the pop music, and why in classical music exactly. I think that this is probably a problem why classical music is a little bit extinct among younger generation. Because, for instance, when I go to a concert, I mean, the worst thing, if I go to a theater, let's say, the worst thing that can happen is for me to look at the actor and to almost to guess every single line, every single gesture, everything. That's like the worst thing. I mean, I can say I have better things to do with a short time on this world than to simply guess. So, and for me, it is a little bit shocking why in classical music the expectation is so low, and why would somebody pay money and 4 hours of their lives to listen to the exactly like the 150th version of Dichterliebe or Winterreise. I would not do it. I would not do it, and I'm a classical musician by myself, and I'm thinking that maybe we should literally like borrow from the experience of the pop musicians, because I think that this concept with these cliches, it's also quite a new one in the aesthetics of classical music. I mean, until 200 years ago, people improvised, did covers like without any shame. Also, this thing with applause, it's also an invention of the late 19th century. Hans von Bülow said, no, you're not allowed. You have to stay there 1 hour or half an hour. Don't clap, don't do anything, or you are doomed to embarrassment and ridicule. I'm very happy. I think that it's extremely important that the public is also a part and expresses their joy and excitement. I think that's quite important. And this, you know, I don't think that I'm quite alone in this thing, because one of my most beloved composers, Modest Petrovich Mussorgsky, he used to say that music is a way of speaking to people, and that people who focus on beauty alone, this is something embarrassing, and they should be ashamed of themselves, because art's ultimate goal is truth, and it's about speaking with people no matter how the consequences. And I think that these cliches are pretty dangerous in a way. So I think that maybe we should get back, actually not go forward, but get back to the aesthetics of a further period. Maybe the past is not that dead, and maybe the future is not, or the present is not that alive as we think.
I want to comment about something you said, because I had a similar experience as a teenager. I liked many different musics. I liked hard rock and roll and jazz and things. And from my mother and my piano teacher, I got the same strict instructions to not listen to this and only practice my Mozart, which was really deadly at the time. And fortunately not deadly enough that I kept the passion to play this kind of music later on. And I think then, to answer your early question from about an hour ago, why we play our pop songs tonight after Brahms, is because we can. It's because it's fun, and there's so much good music that I love. You know, good in the sense you can judge music like a music critic and analyze whether it's a great piece, if it's a, you know, I would never compare St. Matthew Passion with a Beatles song, but it's no reason to choose one over the other. You know, all is fun and all is great. And if it's performed well in a manner that communicates truth, if you want to call it, or whatever human emotion that we can all sit here and relate to one another through the music, then why not? Let's do it, you know. So in classical concerts hall, we usually don't program our pop songs with Brahms and Bach, but we often give them as encores if we can, and it's always fun. And certainly in a venue like here, if we can, why not? And if there was more time and more music that we play well, we would do more, probably. So
I also think it's important to realize that the concert is a ritual. We meet together to experience something together, something that we cannot experience alone. So the collective experience is something uplifting. And that can happen in a pop or jazz concert as much as in a classic concert, and it cannot happen in a pop concert as it cannot happen in a classic concert. It's really the idea that the performer communicates the composition and it speaks to us personally. We are moved, and ultimately then we leave this place and we are slightly transformed. I love the idea that people who arrive by taxi will be friendlier to the taxi driver when they go home than when they arrive from their office or something. So there's always a little adjusting of positive energy in the world. Wherever people leave a concert hall, it's like a little light flash into society. And that's why this music is relevant. We really need it. I mean, if we look around us, the classic music talks, or music in general, music talks about something that we cannot explain, but something that is really, really important. We saw this beautiful documentary about Pina Bausch, the film by Wim Wenders, and she says, well, ultimately it's not even about the dance and the music, but dance and the music are just a vehicle to tell us about that something there, and that's in a time where people feel hopeless and empty for no reasons. I mean, we have everything, especially look here, Zurich, what a rich place. I mean, do people lack anything? There's food, there's entertainment, there's everything, but why does Zurich still not rate highest on the happiness scale on the world? You see, these are the questions, and I think that's why we make classical music, because if somebody needs a good time, he can come to our concerts, and we hopefully can give him or her something to lift the spirit up.
Something I was wondering about is sort of the relationship between music and religion. For instance, there's a lot of people who like high church or historic ritual because the world is so chaotic. There's so much stress in the world. There's so much change in the world. I mean, you just go on CNN and it's enough to put you on antidepressants with everything that's going on. And they want to go back and have this thing always the same. And we've been talking about this. I'm from the United States. My wife's from Germany. We live in Switzerland. And I want Thanksgiving dinner to be the way it always was. It has to be this way. No, that's not the right pumpkin pie. It has to be that one. And because once a year I want to come back to this one place that's the same. And so there's something about this with classical music. You want to go and hear Brahms first and have it be the same, or hear Beethoven and have it be the same. And when they start messing around with Beethoven, it really can kind of, mess you up. Now, wait a minute, that's too fast. And, oh, really? He said it's supposed to be that fast. Well, wait a minute. And yet there has to be the same thing with church. You have to have some sort of real encounter there, too, in order to make it worthwhile and make you come back. And so this, I don't know where this goes, but do you understand what I mean? That people want classical music to kind of represent perhaps a simpler world that maybe didn't ever exist anyway, but yet we have to make it new in order for it to continue to live.
But are you not, I think you're talking about rituals and the importance of rituals. And I think that's true for any ritual. You're mentioning music and classical music, the concert ritual and religion. But I think there's more rituals where people have, and me included, have the desire to hold on to something that repeats. But I think what it is that repeats and what is there that actually varies can be different mixes.
If the joy were to be only that the concert hall looks the same, I see the same people around me, I listen to the same piece, that's one thing. But I can enjoy, we can come back as a ritual to this place. It is a ritual to meet here and experience music. But what happens, whether there's video projections or laser show or piano or lute or harp, or that, I think that can be open. Otherwise, if I would the ritual itself, of course, is empty, but what you connect with the ritual is what makes meaning, gives meaning and sense. And otherwise, it would be an empty ritual. And as I said, there are people who like the aspect of a concert as I will not be surprised. This is the singer as he always sings. And there is also a big part of the audience that says, please give me something else. Offer me. And it's not trying to be different at any price. When I teach for many years now, and I tell my students the interpretation needs to be motivated. If as listeners we see, oh, this person, he made his or she made her homework. She prepared the piece, she knows exactly what she wants. Or not. Yeah, but it's the we don't have to be different. If my interpretation in the end sounds similar to somebody else's because we came to the same conclusions, that's okay. If the interpretation sounds similar because I imitate somebody, it's not okay. So it can sound similar. I hear the same Dichterliebe, but I feel that whoever sings it is committed to the music, connects with the music, and that's what I want to experience in a concert.
Let me quickly introduce Rafael here, who joined us later. Rafael, why don't you say what we did before, 3 sentences on who you are, and then what you just wanted to add.
Okay, hi. I'm Rafael. I'm a cellist. I'm from Luzern. Grew up in Luzern. And I'm working here in Zurich in the orchestra part-time. I have a quartet. I'm teaching in Basel. So I'm doing different things, but all in classical music. So I'm very focused on that side. I just wanted to add to what he said about this interpretation thing. I think what's crucial for us, for the musician, is that even though if you play again and again the same pieces over your whole life, if you would decide at some point when you're 25 what you think about the piece and you would keep playing it like this, nobody would want to listen to you because you would get bored yourself with it. And the reason actually why for myself, why I'm interested in being a classical musician and playing actually the same pieces over and over again is every time I look at a piece and I play it again, I feel maybe slightly different or I have a different approach or I find new things. And that's why I think it's also can keep very fresh, even if the ritual around it might stay the same, actually.
Speaking about interpretation and also covers, I made few in my life for Beatles, also for games, and every time the main thing is the question: am I bringing something new to the world? It's exactly about the interpretation, as she told us, like if I'm coming now to the classical music concert somewhere in the world, I'm expecting that music will bring something new, interpretation, like it was before. It was every time the traditional, because people were walking not to listen like 20 times to Brahms or 400 times to Mussorgsky. They want new interpretation. And now they are not, they're not getting that in the concert hall anymore. Because people, they, like our colleagues who are playing in the concert halls, they are not working now enough, I think, for me. Because I come, okay, I listen to the music, it's again the same things to do.
There is a place, for instance, when one can listen to a few bars from an artist and one can almost immediately recognize who the artist is. That's a CD with Horowitz. I was listening to it in Berlin a couple of days ago. It was Kreisleriana. And after like 5 bars, I immediately recognized Horowitz. So, and this was also a matter of the past, Rubinstein had his sound. It was impossible to recognize him, to confuse him with somebody else. Horowitz the same. Now you can hear singers and you have no idea who he is, and they are only copy-paste a little bit. And I think that this is a real pity. And regarding, talking about, exactly like these cliches and what is the message and who is the messenger, I think in classical music for me, is just as important that the artist is connected to the piece. For instance, as a Romanian, I come from Romania, and my cliche is always, oh, so you are going to play Romanian music, Enescu. I know Enescu, I know that, I know. And I said, no, I don't play Enescu. It's not in my hop repertoire. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 5 years. But right now, for instance, I'm connected very much to Schubert. Why? With Winterreise. Because when I read Winterreise, it's exactly my life story. You know, it's exactly about what it means to feel a foreigner everywhere, what it means to be a Romanian for Swiss, what it means to go back to Romania and see that you are not the same anymore. That's exactly my story. This is what I can bring new to this piece. This is my legacy, ultimately.
We just need to bring it to an end, but you had another question? Or?
Yeah, well, I like the most when I go to concerts if I know, or if something expected is there and something unexpected, and something old I can relate to and something new that's refreshing, or something for tonight, for example, some Brahms, I know the composer, and something personal from you. So, and that is for me the best feel, if something is already in you, but you can grow also some new aspect together.
Last thing, Martin, you haven't said anything yet, so do you have anything?
Say something about musical styles.
Or you're interested in architecture, aren't you?
Yes, that's right.
Well, okay. Do you see any relationship between music? I see lots of relationships. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, no, not from architecture, but I've done a Maturarbeit about harmony and math, and also brought the approach from the music, like from Mozart. He really has the math in it, and yeah, that's my approach to the classical music, to try to look behind it and see how it's structured and the math, and yeah.
It's the best. I think this is enough, yeah? Okay. Well, we hope you'll all stay tuned for the concert tonight. It promises to be quite amazing.
Yes, it's going to be live streamed also in 2 hours, and we better get going on our rehearsal.
Okay.
We better.
Thank you all
hit
for
the Brahms.
coming.
Thanks all. Thanks.
It's cool.
I have like some other really interesting questions, but I think this is really,
Next time,
quite good.
We'll do it again.
Danke vielmals.